So, today, we're going to uncover the story of a lost empire. I'm talking about a city that was once the second largest in the entire world, only to completely vanish from history. We're going to piece its story together using everything from the journals of the guy who rediscovered it to eyewitness accounts from people who saw it in its prime. Let's not start at the beginning. Let's start at the end. It's the year 1800, and a Scottish officer, Colin Mackenzie, is being led by some local guides deep into the jungles of southern India. They bring him to this vast, overgrown landscape of ruins. And as he starts mapping these forgotten temples and palaces, he realizes he's stumbled onto something truly monumental. So as Mackenzie is there, mapping these incredible fallen palaces and grand temples, you gotta think, one question must have been just haunting him. How does a society get this powerful, build all of this, and then just, poof, vanish into nothing? That's the question that's going to drive our whole story. Okay, so to solve this mystery, we gotta rewind way back to the 14th century. It was a time of immense chaos. The powerful Delhi Sultanate up in the north, which had been around for ages, was starting to crumble under its own weight and, invasions from abroad. And out of this power vacuum, these two brothers from the south, Harihara and Buka, their exact origins are, kind of shrouded in legend, they seized the opportunity. Their goal was to unite all the fractured Hindu lords against the northern sultanates, with a really clear promise: join us, and we will bring Hindu rule back to South India. Now, there is this local story that just perfectly captures the spirit of their new empire. So the brothers are out hunting, and they see something absolutely astonishing. A tiny hare, which should be terrified prey, turns on their massive hunting dogs with this ferocious courage. A local sage tells them, hey, that's an omen. This is a special place, a place where the weak can become strong. And so they named their new capital Vijayanagara, which literally means the city of victory. And look, this wasn't just some random name. It was a declaration. Their new empire was going to be just like that defiant little hare. It was the hunted that had turned around, ready to fight back against the great powers of the day. And wow, the city they built, it was absolutely extraordinary. This wasn't just some fortress. It became a global superpower, a center of wealth and culture that just dazzled anyone who saw it. Let's take a look at what this place was like at its absolute peak. By the year 1500, Vijayanagara was home to 500,000 people. Now, just to put that in perspective for you, that made it the second largest city in the entire world. The only city bigger was Beijing. Think about this. At the time, London's population was maybe 100,000 people. This place was a sprawling metropolis. Visitors who had seen the great capitals of Europe, they were just completely stunned by the sheer scale and beauty of it all. The markets were, well, they were the stuff of legend. One Portuguese traveler, Domingo Paes, wrote about a city just overflowing with wealth you can barely imagine. It was a global hub, pulling in merchants from all over the world to trade in gems, spices, you name it. But here's what's really fascinating. The city wasn't just huge. It had this incredibly unique identity. It was a cultural hybrid, a place where they took competing ideas and made them their own. So you had these soaring Hindu temples built in the ancient style, but right next door, the elites lived in palaces with Islamic arches and domes. Its army was a modern, globalized force, with Turkish cavalry and Portuguese musketeers fighting side by side. You see, this ability to blend traditions, that wasn't a weakness. It was their superpower. And that brings us to, well, its most famous king, the great Krishnadeva Raya. This guy was a brilliant general, a poet, a ruler who took the empire to its absolute zenith. But his greatest victory would, paradoxically, end up sealing his empire's fate. In 1520, Krishnadeva marched his enormous army against his biggest rival, the Sultan of Bijapur. The goal was to capture the Raichur Doab, this diamond-rich piece of land they had been fighting over for centuries. This was it. This was going to be the decisive battle. So what you had here was a clash of two totally different ways of fighting. Vijayanagara was the lord of men, relying on what seemed like a never-ending supply of foot soldiers. The Sultan, though, was a master of modern warfare. He had elite cavalry and this devastating arsenal of almost 1,000 cannons. At first, the battle was a complete disaster for Vijayanagara. I mean, the Sultan's cannons just ripped through their lines, and the army started to panic and run. But Krishnadeva, seeing his army just collapse, refused to accept defeat. And he gave this stunningly brutal order: kill our own men who are fleeing. So you have these soldiers, right? They're trapped. They can't go back because their own captains will kill them. Their only choice is to turn and charge forward. And in this desperate, chaotic push, the sheer weight of their numbers just overwhelmed the Sultan's army. The cannons were useless up close. The tide turned. That hunted rabbit had turned and bitten again, securing the greatest military victory in the empire's history. But here's the twist in the story. This incredible triumph, it actually contained the seeds of the empire's own destruction. The victory was so total, so humiliating for his rivals, that it fatally upset the balance of power in the whole region. Drunk on victory, Krishnadeva started openly mocking the other Muslim sultanates. When they sent messengers urging him to be cautious, he sent back this defiant, taunting reply. He saw them as divided and weak, but his arrogance completely blinded him to the fear he was creating. So his arrogance, it leads to this one fatal mistake. He did the one thing that seemed totally impossible. He united his enemies. The 5 rival sultanates, who'd been fighting each other for generations, put aside all their differences to face this one massive threat. Decades later, their combined army marched south for revenge. And this time, the city of victory would fall. And so, the empire's greatest strength, that defiant, aggressive rabbit spirit, became its downfall. And that's how we end up back where we started, in those overgrown ruins. The destruction was so total, the sacking so systematic, that the second largest city on Earth was effectively erased from the world's memory. It was burned, looted, and just abandoned for centuries. Its magnificent structures crumbled back into the earth until it was only known by that simple, haunting local name, the ruined city. So, the mystery Colin Mackenzie stumbled upon is solved. We know how this incredible society rose, and we know why it fell. But its story leaves us with a final, much deeper question, doesn't it? The ruins of Vijayanagara are the silent testament that no victory is final and no city is eternal. Which kind of forces us to ask, how permanent are the great monuments of our own time?